Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Life-Changing True Stories. Today, I bring you a powerful and deeply loving story. Asterisk, the crystal chandelier sparkled above the private dining room like 1,000 judging eyes. Sofia Rivera sat frozen in her velvet chair, wishing the marble floor would crack open and swallow her whole. Her navy blue dress, the nicest thing she owned, suddenly felt cheap against the silken designer labels surrounding her. Years old, and not even one boyfriend. Her Aunt Patricia's voice sliced through the murmur of conversation like a knife through butter. 3 glasses of wine had loosened her tongue, and she seemed determined to make Sofia the evening's entertainment. How was that even possible in this day and age? Sofia's fingers gripped her cloth napkin until her knuckles turned white. Around the table, her mother's friends leaned in with fascinated expressions, hungry for drama. The restaurant, an expensive Italian place with waiters in crisp uniforms, felt like a courthouse where she was on trial. Maybe she's too picky, suggested her cousin Diana, flipping her perfectly highlighted hair. Or maybe nobody's asked. Carmen Rivera, Sofia's mother, laughed along with the others. The sound stabbed deeper than any insult could. I just don't understand it. She's pretty enough. It must be her personality. Too serious, too quiet. Men want fun, not a walking encyclopedia. Each word landed like a physical blow. Sofia counted the seconds, wondering how long she would have to endure this before she could politely excuse herself. The other diners in the restaurant seemed to have stopped eating just to watch her humiliation. Waiters stood frozen, their trays suspended midair. Perhaps she's saving herself for someone special, Aunt Patricia continued with mock sympathy. How noble. Meanwhile, life is passing you by, dear. Sofia felt something crack inside her chest. She looked up at the gold-framed mirror on the opposite wall and saw her reflection through tears that threatened to spill. Dark eyes filled with pain, trembling lips, flushed cheeks. Was this who she really was? Someone so pathetic that even her own family felt entitled to mock her? That's when she saw him in the mirror first, a tall figure entering the restaurant. Then she turned her head and saw him directly. He moved through the dining room like he owned not just this restaurant, but the entire city. His charcoal suit fit perfectly, his dark hair had silver threads at the temples, and his presence commanded attention without effort. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Time seemed to stop. He changed direction, walking straight toward her table with confident, measured steps. Not to another table, not to the bar, but directly to her. Sorry I'm late, he said in a deep voice that sent shivers down Sofia's spine. The entire table fell silent so suddenly that the quiet felt heavy. Aunt Patricia stopped talking mid-sentence. Carmen's mouth fell open, every eye fixed on the stranger who stood beside Sofia's chair. Julian Carmen whispered in disbelief. Julian Blackwood. What are you doing here? But he wasn't looking at Carmen. His eyes, dark blue and impossibly intense, stayed locked on Sofia's face. I've been looking everywhere for you, he said with a smile that transformed his serious features into something magnetic. Forgive me, darling. Sofia opened her mouth to speak, to ask who he was, to say he must be confused. But before she could make a sound, he leaned down, cupped her face gently in his hands, and kissed her. The world disappeared. His lips were warm and sure, tasting of mint and coffee. Sofia, who had never been kissed before, felt electricity course through her entire body. It wasn't like the movies. It was better, more real, more overwhelming. Her hands moved on their own, reaching up to his shoulders, feeling the expensive fabric of his suit beneath her fingertips. When they finally separated, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Sofia blinked, dazed, like waking from a dream that felt too vivid. Julian Blackwood, he introduced himself to the others without releasing Sofia's hand. Sofia's boyfriend. A pleasure to finally meet you all? The expression on Aunt Patricia's face was priceless. Her eyes bulged, her jaw dropped, complete shock written across her features. Carmen looked like she might faint. Julian Blackwood, Diana stammered, her voice suddenly sweet and fawning. Of Blackwood Hotels? The most eligible bachelor in the country? He smiled slightly, but his eyes never left Sofia's face. Not a bachelor anymore, obviously. He gently stroked Sophia's cheek with his thumb, a gesture so intimate it made her blush even deeper. "We've been together for 6 months, haven't we, love?" Sophia began, completely lost. He leaned close, his lips near her ear, and whispered words only she could hear. "Pretend you love me? Just for a moment. I'll explain everything later." Warm breath against her ear sent waves of shivers through her body. When he pulled back, his eyes held a silent plea. Sophia didn't understand anything, but something inside her made her nod. 6 months and 2 days, she corrected, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "You're terrible with dates, darling." The smile he gave her was dazzling, full of gratitude and something else she couldn't identify. "I'm taking her away for a moment," Julian announced to the table, helping Sophia stand. "We have reservations to celebrate her birthday elsewhere. I hope you don't mind." Before anyone could protest, Julian was already guiding her between the tables, his hand firmly on the small of her back. Sophia felt every eye in the restaurant following them, some amazed, others envious, all disbelieving. "Who are you?" she whispered as they walked through the restaurant. "And why did you kiss me?" He glanced at her sideways, an enigmatic smile playing on his lips. "I'm your salvation this evening," he answered quietly, "and you might be mine." At the door, Julian stopped, looked back at Sophia's still stunned family, then took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his intense eyes fixed on hers. Sophia felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump into the unknown. Everything she knew, everything she was, seemed small and insignificant compared to the promise of adventure she saw in those eyes. "No," she answered honestly, "but I'll pretend I do." Julian smiled, squeezed her hand, and together they walked out into the brilliant afternoon sunlight. Leaving behind a restaurant full of astonished whispers and a completely bewildered family, the black car in question's the sleek black sports car glided through city traffic. Like a shark through water, Sophia watched Julian's profile as he drove, his fingers tapping the leather steering wheel to a rhythm only he could hear. The city lights blurred past her window, neon signs and tall buildings creating streaks of color in her vision. "Are you planning to explain what just happened? Or should I assume that kidnapping women is your hobby?" she asked finally, crossing her arms over her chest. Julian turned his head slightly, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The streetlights cast shadows across his face, making him look almost dangerous. "Would you prefer I take you back to that table?" he asked. "I can turn around right now." Sophia pressed her lips together, looking out the window at the luxury stores passing by. Point taken. The car pulled up in front of a discreet cafe on a quiet corner. Through the tinted windows, Sophia could see wooden tables and minimalist designer lamps. It looked expensive and private. "Here we can talk quietly," Julian said, turning off the engine. "And I promise I'm not a kidnapper, at least not professionally." Inside, a waiter led them to a secluded table. The aroma of freshly ground coffee and sweet pastries wrapped around them, creating an intimate and cozy atmosphere that felt worlds away from the restaurant they'd just escaped. The espresso cups sat between them like tiny barriers. Sophia studied Julian's hands as he held his cup with natural elegance. Large hands, long fingers, perfectly manicured nails. Everything about him screamed wealth and power, yet here he sat across from her, a complete stranger who had just turned her world upside down. "Victoria Hartley," Julian began, after the waiter had left. "Does that name mean anything to you?" Sophia shook her head, watching how the dim cafe lighting played across his features. "My ex-fiancée," he continued, his eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond her shoulder. "She's been stalking me for 3 months, showing up at every event, calling my business partners, appearing at my office building. When I saw you in that restaurant, being the center of unwanted attention, I thought perhaps we could help each other. By kissing me in front of everyone without even knowing my name." Indignation colored Sophia's voice, though the tingling sensation on her lips hadn't faded. "Impulsive, I know," Julian admitted, tilting his head to study her. "But effective. Tell me, have you ever acted on instinct? Done something completely irrational just because it felt right in that moment?" Sophia's cheeks burned under his penetrating gaze. How could she explain that her entire life had been careful planning, a safe and predictable path, taking care of her sick father until he passed, working double shifts to help her mother with bills, putting her own dreams on hold year after year? "Not all of us can afford irrationality, Mr. Blackwood," she said quietly. "Some of us live with real consequences." Julian's expression softened. "Julian, please. And you're right. I owe you an apology and a fuller explanation." He paused, drumming his fingers on the table. "I need your help this weekend. A family event at our estate in the mountains. Victoria will be there, and if I show up alone, she'll take it as an invitation to continue her pursuit." "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" Sophia almost choked on her coffee. "Why me? You could hire someone, a model, an actress." "Exactly," Julian said, searching for the right words. "Victoria knows all those people. You're different. You're authentic. Nobody would question why I fell for you." Sophia raised an eyebrow, unsure whether she'd just received a compliment or an insult. "Besides," he continued, his eyes glinting with amusement, "judging by your family's reaction, I assume you wouldn't mind a change of narrative either. A millionaire boyfriend could silence many mouths." "And what do I get out of this?" Sophia asked. "Besides the dubious satisfaction of seeing my Aunt Patricia's face again?" Julian leaned forward on his elbows, bringing himself closer to her. "What do you want? Money? A job? Revenge on someone?" Sophia looked at him steadily, surprised by the direct offer. Her mind flew to the letter she kept hidden in her dresser drawer. The acceptance letter from Le Cordon Bleu in Paris. An impossible dream because of the astronomical costs. "Pay for my culinary studies in Paris." The words escaped her mouth before she could stop them. Julian's smile widened. "That's all. Consider it done. Tuition, housing, expenses. A small price for your company this weekend." "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't," he responded with frankness. "But we'll sign a contract if that makes you feel better. I'm a businessman after all." The mountain estate 2 hours later, sitting beside Julian in his private helicopter flying over the city. Sophia wondered at what exact moment she had lost her mind. The contract, drafted by Julian's personal lawyer, and signed by both of them, rested in her purse. Below them, the city spread out like an infinite tapestry of twinkling lights against the sunset, blue-tinted mountains framing the horizon in the distance. "First time in a helicopter?" Julian asked, noticing how she gripped the seat. "Is it that obvious?" Julian leaned over to adjust her headset, his fingers brushing gently against her cheek. "Relax. The view is worth it." He was right. From up here, the world looked different, smaller somehow. All her problems, all the humiliation from dinner, seemed to shrink when viewed from this height. "It's like being in another world," she murmured, momentarily forgetting her nervousness.
"Welcome to my world."
Then he responded, his eyes reflecting the golden sunset. "By the way, you'll need this for tonight." Julian pulled a small velvet box from his jacket and opened it. Inside rested a ring with a diamond that captured the dying light and transformed it into 1,000 rainbow sparkles. "I can't accept this," Sophia protested, though her eyes couldn't look away from the jewel. "It's part of the costume," Julian said, taking her left hand and sliding the ring onto her finger. "We've been together for 6 months and engaged for 3 weeks, according to our story. Perfect fit." The weight of the diamond on her hand felt strangely comforting, as if it granted her new power. "What else should I know about us?" she asked. "Where did we meet? Why did you fall in love with me?" Julian's gaze became surprisingly sincere. "We met at an art exhibition. I saw you contemplating a painting for 20 minutes without moving. Your concentration intrigued me, your ability to immerse yourself completely in something you're passionate about." Sophia looked at him, astonished. "You've thought about this?" "A good deception requires convincing details," he replied, returning to his professional tone. "As for why I fell in love with you, we'll improvise that part." The helicopter began descending toward an impressive property on a mountainside. Modern architectural villas unfolded among lush gardens. Soft lights illuminated a path toward what appeared to be a party in full swing. "Ready for your society debut?" Julian asked as the helicopter touched down. Sophia took a deep breath, contemplating the ring on her finger. "How many people are down there?" "About 200. Just the business elite and some international guests." Julian took her hand and squeezed it slightly. "You'll be fine. Just be yourself. And if they don't like me?" Julian looked at her intensely. "Then they don't deserve to know you." The ex-fiancé, the helicopter doors opened. The sound of classical music and elegant conversations flooded the cabin. Julian descended first, then extended his hand to help her. As she stepped onto solid ground, Sophia glimpsed a blonde woman, impeccably dressed, watching them from a distance. Her calculating gaze sent a shiver down Sophia's spine. "That's her," she whispered. Julian nodded imperceptibly, placing his hand on Sophia's waist and guiding her toward the party. "Smile, darling. The show is about to begin." The blonde woman approached, champagne glass in hand, lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Julian, darling, what an interesting surprise," she said, evaluating Sophia from head to toe. "Won't you introduce us to your new social experiment?" Victoria Hartley, Julian introduced with a diplomatic smile. "Meet my fiancée, Sophia Rivera." Victoria's hand, cold as polished marble, extended toward her. Her nails, painted blood red, looked like claws ready to tear flesh. "Charmed," Victoria murmured, her calculating eyes evaluating every inch of Sophia. "Rivera, from the Riveras of the capital." Sophia straightened her back, conscious of her department store dress among a sea of haute couture. "No, just the Riveras from across town. We're ordinary people." An uncomfortable silence floated between them until Julian intervened. "Sophia is a chef. She's just been accepted to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris." Victoria let out a musical but empty laugh. "How cute." Julian has always had a weakness for charity projects. Last year, he adopted an abandoned greyhound. This year, she left the phrase unfinished, her gaze completing the insult. Blood boiled in Sophia's veins. "I'd rather be a project than a relic of the past." Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. Julian, sensing the brewing storm, placed his hand on Sophia's waist. "Excuse us, Victoria. We need to greet my parents." The evening unfolded like an obstacle course. Julian's mother, an elegant woman with eyes identical to her son's, examined Sophia with polite reserve. His father, patriarch of the hotel dynasty, barely gave her a distracted glance before continuing his conversation about corporate mergers. Julian's sisters, two perfectly coiffed and made-up women, exchanged significant looks when she mentioned her public university education. After 2 hours of forced conversations, the night air, scented with pine and mountain freshness, caressed her flushed face. Party lights reflected on the valley below like liquid stars. "I brought you this," said a voice behind her. Julian offered her a glass of champagne, his expression unreadable under the silver moonlight. "You're doing well?" Sophia accepted the drink, taking a long sip. "I'm lying terribly. I'm a complete disaster." "You're authentic," Julian said, leaning against the railing, contemplating the dark horizon. "That confuses people in my circle. They're so used to falsehoods, they don't know how to process honesty. And are you confused too?" Julian looked at her sideways, an enigmatic smile dancing on his lips. "Completely." A comfortable silence settled between them as they watched the stars. The music from the party arrived muted, creating a bubble of intimacy around them. "Why cooking?" he asked finally. Sophia played with her glass, considering the question. "Because it transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Because it lets me create something that makes people happy. Because every dish tells a story." "What story would you tell about me?" Julian had moved imperceptibly closer, his shoulder brushing against hers. "A dark chocolate soufflé," she answered without hesitation. Imposing on the outside, intense on the inside, and completely unpredictable during preparation. A genuine sound that transformed his serious face into something more accessible, almost vulnerable. First time I've been compared to a dessert. First time I've pretended to be a stranger's fiancée, she countered. Raising her glass in an ironic toast, their gazes met over the rims of their glasses, and something changed in the air between them. Julian set his drink on the railing and moved closer. "May I?" he whispered, his eyes fixed on her lips. Sophia's heart raced. This time there would be no audience, no pretense, just the two of them, under the starry canopy. "Why?" she managed to articulate, her voice barely audible. "'Cause I haven't thought about anything else since the restaurant," he confessed. Unexpected sincerity in his voice. Sophia closed her eyes and nodded slightly. Julian's lips found hers, with surprising delicacy. This wasn't the passionate, theatrical kiss from the restaurant, but something deeper, more intimate. A slow and careful mutual exploration. Her hands slid to his neck, feeling his racing pulse beneath her fingers. Julian drew her closer, one hand on her waist, the other gently caressing her cheek. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard. Sophia kept her eyes closed a moment longer, savoring the sensation. "That wasn't in the contract," she murmured, opening her eyes to find Julian's intense gaze. "Consider it an additional clause," he responded, brushing his nose against hers. The storm erupted with merciless fury. By dawn, Sofia Rivera's name topped headlines on food blogs and gossip columns alike. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, cruel hashtags multiplying by the minute. Someone had leaked manipulated photos suggesting her relationship with Julian was a transaction, that she'd slept her way into her position, sitting in the hotel's crisis room. Sophia watched with a stone expression as the public relations team broke down the situation. Nervous executives, lawyers with leather briefcases, crisis management specialists, all talking about her as if she weren't present. "We should issue a statement temporarily distancing ourselves," suggested a woman in an impeccable suit. "Preserving the hotel's reputation is the priority." "Absolutely not," Julian interrupted, entering the room like a contained storm. "Sophia is the victim here, not the culprit." All eyes swung between them, seeking confirmation of the rumors. The tension in the air could be cut with a knife. "With all due respect, Mr. Blackwood," the executive insisted, "the accusations are serious. Public perception matters." "I don't give a damn about public perception," Julian snapped, his usual composure cracking visibly. "We won't abandon anyone over malicious rumors." Sophia stood slowly, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from her blouse. Everyone fell silent. "I appreciate your concern," she said in a clear, firm voice. "But I don't need defending. I'll handle this myself." Julian looked at her with surprise. "Sophia, our legal team can handle this." "No." The determination in her voice silenced the entire room. "This is my reputation, my career. I'll respond in my own way." Without waiting for a reply, she left the meeting. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway as she mentally formulated a plan. She wouldn't run this time. She wouldn't hide the video response in her room. Sophia set up her professional camera, adjusted the lighting, and took a deep breath. She pressed record. "My name is Sophia Rivera. I'm a professional chef, culinary instructor, and recently the target of a smear campaign." Her voice sounded calm, though her heart pounded wildly. "I won't apologize for jobs I earned through my own merit. I won't be ashamed of personal connections others fabricate in their imagination. And I definitely won't stay silent when people try to erase years of hard work with lies." For 20 minutes. She detailed her professional journey, explained how she'd been hired, and addressed each accusation directly with dignity and transparency. No drama, no victimhood, just raw honesty. To whoever is orchestrating this, the truth doesn't fear the light. Can you say the same? She finished recording, edited briefly, and published the video across all her platforms. Then she turned off her phone, lay back on the bed, and closed her eyes. Preparing for whatever consequences would come, the knock on her door came 4 hours later. Opening it, she found Julian's assistant with an astonished expression. "Your video," he said, showing her his tablet. "It's gone viral. Major news networks are sharing it as an example of crisis management. Even public figures are expressing their support." Sophia took the device, scrolling through surprisingly positive comments. Renowned chefs defending her, former employers confirming her work ethic, even her students from community classes sharing testimonials. And this isn't all, the assistant continued. The manipulated photographs have been discredited by experts. Victoria Hartley is facing a possible defamation lawsuit, a knot formed in her throat. Really? The public is on your side, Chef Rivera, he smiled with genuine admiration. The inaugural event is still on, with more attendance requests than ever. Family secret when the assistant left. Sophia remained motionless by the window, watching the sunset paint the surrounding mountains orange. An unfamiliar feeling grew in her chest. Not happiness exactly, but something deeper. Validation. The knock on her door interrupted her reflections. Opening it, Julian appeared before her, holding an aged wooden box. "May I come in?" he asked with unusual vulnerability in his voice. Sophia hesitated an instant before stepping aside. Julian walked to the small corner table, carefully depositing the box. "I saw your video," he commented, maintaining a prudent distance. "It was extraordinary, brave." She crossed her arms. "I didn't do it to impress you, I know." Fleeting smile crossed his face. "That's why it was so impressive." A loaded silence floated between them. Sophia pointed at the box. "What's that?" Julian took a deep breath. "The photos, the anonymous message mentioned." Sophia's heart lurched. "How did you know?" "Victoria made sure I knew she'd contacted you." Julian carefully opened the box. "I wanted you to see this yourself before drawing conclusions." With trembling fingers, Sophia extracted the photographs. Young women, some vaguely resembling her, others completely different, all smiling beside an older man she recognized as Julian's father. "I don't understand," she murmured. Confused, "My father ran a culinary scholarship program for 20 years, Julian explained. Young talents from disadvantaged communities. He gave them education, mentorship, job opportunities." Sophia reviewed more photographs. Graduation ceremonies, internships in professional kitchens, faces radiant with pride. "Why would you keep this in a safe?" Julian approached, pointing to a specific photograph. "Because Victoria discovered my father diverted corporate funds to finance the program without board approval. Technically illegal, though morally right." Sophia observed the image carefully. A younger man handing a certificate to a woman with familiar features. Her eyes widened in recognition. "This is my grandmother," she whispered. "Your grandmother, Elena Rivera, was one of the program's first scholarship recipients 30 years ago," Julian confirmed quietly. "She used the training to open a small restaurant that supported your family for decades." The revelation hit her like a physical wave. Impossible. "My family never mentioned this. The program required absolute confidentiality to avoid corporate questioning." Julian sat across from her. "When I saw you in that restaurant, your surname seemed familiar. Then, seeing your mother's reaction to me, I confirmed my suspicions." Sophia processed the information, stunned. "That's why you kissed me. A family connection experiment." "No." Julian took her hand cautiously. "I kissed you because I couldn't help it. The connection was instant, unexpected, magnetic." Their gazes met intensely. Sophia slowly withdrew her hand. "Why would Victoria send me to find these photos thinking they'd hurt me?" "Because she only saw the superficial. Young women receiving support from the Ferrer family. She assumed the worst because she's incapable of conceiving selfless motivations." Julian gently closed the box. "She doesn't know any way of relating except through manipulation." Sophia stood, needing space to absorb so many revelations. "My grandmother saved your father's life during a kitchen accident. That's why he created the scholarship program." The pieces fit together, like a complex puzzle. Her mother's strange looks when mentioning the Ferrers. Her insistence that Sophia study gastronomy, despite their economic limitations. Her inexplicable sadness when Sophia described the stranger who had kissed her. "I need time to process this," she murmured. Julian nodded, heading toward the door. "I understand." Julian, she stopped him before he left. "Thank you for showing me the truth," he turned, his expression open and vulnerable as never before. "Always." The grand opening arrived like a sunrise after a long storm. The culinary program's inaugural event brought food critics, celebrity chefs, and media from across the country. Sophia stood in her new teaching kitchen. Wearing the personalized chef's apron Julian had gifted her, small silver soufflé pin attached to her chest, her first demonstration class was packed. Cameras captured every movement as she explained traditional techniques with modern twists, her passion and authenticity shining through. The audience was captivated, asking questions, taking notes, laughing at her occasional jokes from the back of the room. Julian watched with undisguised pride. Beside him stood his father, Alberto, in a wheelchair but smiling broadly. And next to Alberto sat Carmen Rivera, Sophia's mother, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter shine. After the demonstration, as guests mingled over wine and appetizers, Julian approached Sophia in a quiet corner. "You were magnificent," he said simply. "I was terrified," she admitted with a laugh, "but it didn't show." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "Sophia, I know we started this as a deception, but somewhere along the way, it became real for me. Completely terrifyingly real." Sophia's breath caught. "Julian, you don't have to say anything now," he interrupted gently. "I just needed you to know. When you're ready for Paris, I'll support you. If you want me to wait, I'll wait. If you decide this world isn't for you, I'll understand." Tears gathered in Sophia's eyes. What if I don't want Paris anymore? What if I want to build something here, something of my own, with people I trust? Julian's face broke into a genuine smile. "Then I'd say you're exactly where you're meant to be." "And what about Victoria?" "The threats to your father." "Handled," Julian said. "Legal dealt with it. Sometimes standing up to bullies is enough to make them back down." Carmen approached them tentatively. "Sophia and Mia, can we talk?" Sophia looked at her mother, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not the critical woman from the restaurant, but someone who'd carried her own pain, her own secrets, trying to protect her daughter in misguided ways. "Yes, Mama, we can talk." As mother and daughter walked toward the terrace, Julian watched them go. His father wheeled up beside him. "That one's special," Alberto said quietly. "I know. Don't let her go. I won't." 6 months later, Sophia's restaurant, Abuela Elena's Legacy, opened to rave reviews. An intimate space that honored traditional recipes while embracing innovation, it became an instant success. The walls displayed photographs from Alberto's old scholarship program, celebrating the lives changed through culinary education. On opening night, Sophia stood at the entrance greeting guests. She wore a simple, black dress, her short hair styled elegantly, confidence radiating from her smile. No longer the woman who'd been mocked at a birthday dinner, but someone who'd found her voice, her strength, her purpose. Julian arrived with flowers, but not as a grand gesture. Just as himself, the man who'd become her partner in every sense, supporting her dreams while pursuing his own. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. "Always," she replied, taking it, as they entered the packed restaurant together. Carmen sat at a table with Alberto. The two old friends reconnected after decades. Diana was there too, having apologized months ago, genuinely impressed by her cousin's transformation. Even Aunt Patricia attended, subdued and respectful. But most importantly, the restaurant was filled with scholarship students. Young chefs starting their journeys, food lovers who appreciated authentic passion, and people who'd followed Sophia's story and wanted to support her dream. During dinner service, as Sophia worked in her kitchen creating dishes that told stories of heritage and hope, Julian watched from a corner table. Their eyes met across the busy room. They shared a smile that needed no words. This wasn't the fairy tale they'd pretended. It was better. It was real. Built on honesty, respect, and the courage to transform shame into something golden. And as the evening unfolded with laughter, incredible food, and genuine connection, Sophia realized that sometimes the best love stories start with a lie that becomes truth. A stranger who becomes home, and a kiss that changes everything. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.